My name is Dennis Smith. For 18 years, I was a New York City firefighter. Many of the people who responded on 9/11 were my friends and colleagues. In the months that followed, we worked together at the site, which we came to call Ground Zero. I watched my friends searching for loved ones in the rubble. And I knew that for me, the best way to tell this story, respectfully, is to tell it through the voices of those who were there. Their courage in the face of such terrible loss has given me hope. In the words of the poet Seamus Heaney, hope for a sea change on the far side of revenge.
I felt so lucky that my dad was a fireman, you know.
He used to come home with the red eyes, smelling like smoke, go directly to bed, because he would have to get up and go back to work.
My father was a cop, 32 years. My sister, a cop for 25 years.
I wanted some stories to tell when I retired and went back home. You know, I wanted some excitement, some adventure.
It's a brotherhood. You spend a lot of time with each other, trusting each other.
If you entered a room with 200 of us there, I get a hug from everybody, he gets a hug from everybody.
I lived in a working class neighborhood in Queens Village, and a lot of my friends had friends who were cops and had friends who were firefighters or relatives who were firefighters, and they urged me to take the firefighter's test and the police test.
Took the police, took the fire. It's just something you did back then.
I was not one of these kids that grew up and always wanted to be a fireman. That was not me.
I was one of these kids that had 100 fire trucks in his house. I never can remember a time when I wasn't interested in becoming a fireman.
Let's go! I think every little boy's dream is, you know, they're playing cops and robbers, and they want to be, you know, a policeman, a fireman, an astronaut, and fireman's what I got. It's gonna be good. These are our forcible entry tools. This is our Halligan tool. This is what every fireman wants under his Christmas tree. I think right here. One member would gain entry, get a purchase. The second member comes around, and when I give the command, if I'm the guy with this, I say one to hit because I don't want my fingers to get smashed off.
Have fun, kid.
Thanks, man. All right, thanks, Rob.
I remember fireman being happy-go-lucky. You know, so I said, I want that job.
Joe always wanted to be a firefighter. He'd run around the house with his grandfather's helmet on, breaking things. 20 years old, and 2 weeks later, he was in the police academy.
Joe Vigiano was, he was large in stature.
Joe had actually been shot a few times. He was shot once in the head, and he was shot numerous times in the chest on 2 separate occasions.
John, on the other hand, he was going to be Donald Trump. He was going to make $1 million and take care of his mother and father. When I came down with the cancer, he realized how much Rescue 2 had taken care of my family. And he said, "I want to be a firefighter." It's a firefighter. What happened to Donald Trump?
My brother had a scanner that he would listen to every night, and he would listen to the whole entire city of New York. You'd give him an intersection, and he would tell you what truck companies are coming, what engine companies are coming.
My brother Tim was the only one of my brothers who actually knew that he was going to be a fireman. It seemed to be his destiny.
Everybody's kids got to know each other. We would have picnics and gatherings and outings, and they became annual things, company parties, and functions became very important to turn out for because you never knew if you were going to be the next guy. That's what really makes you really tight as firemen, and that's how families really get to know each other because you have to rely on each other, and that's the way it really is.
Firefighter Joseph Higgins.
On your feet!
Joe Higgins, my old drill instructor. My brother always said, wait till you see him.
I present to you the first class post.
My dad worked with him. My dad worked with his father and his brothers.
When I was old enough to hear the fire whistle blow and asked what that was, and then seeing these big red trucks coming down the street, I guess it just stirred a little something in me, and I thought that that would be a lot of fun to ride on a big red truck. And I think that's what it is in the beginning, fun.
It's kind of like you're on a team, you know? You're with your guys, you're with your friends, and you win. They save women and children from burning buildings, they put the fire out. There aren't too many jobs that you get to be a hero.
When I came in the fire service 40 years ago, I wanted a job. I needed a job. The culture of rescue evolved in the 70s. Everything that could have happened in the city was happening.
We had people shooting at us, throwing Molotov cocktails at the fire engines.
Baptism by fire, and that's what we had in those days in the 70s.
Our unit did over 9,000 calls in 1 year.
You go to one fire, stand on the roof, and pick the next fire you're going to.
We went to so many fires that we got very good at it because we did it over and over and over and over again.
There was more turmoil in the city at that time. Civil rights movement was taking place, the layoffs took place.
There had been a movement of many businesses and financial institutions from Lower Manhattan to Midtown or across the river or away from New York altogether. It seemed to us that major towers would draw attention to Lower Manhattan and probably strengthen it as a center. So we prepared plans for the Twin Towers and presented them to the governor of New York, who happened to be my brother at the time.
Very shortly, you're going to have a great thrill when you see the actual design and plan for this great center.
We've been fighting this type of construction, and it's economical and it's aesthetically attractive, so they keep building them.
The problem with John O'Hagan is he was ahead of his time. One of the problems he identified was the use of spray-on asbestos as a substitute for concrete to protect the steel from heat. You look at the World Trade Center, that building was 60 or 70% steel and 40 or 30% concrete. Steel is not resistant to fire. When heat attacks steel, it melts, it warps, it twists, it expands, and it loses its supporting strength, and it fails, it collapses. We call these new high-rise office buildings semi-combustible.
I remember I didn't like the design when it first went up. But as time went on, I started to like it. It kind of grows on you, you know, and you get used to it, and then you start to like it, actually.
I remember it very well, the Twin Towers going up. All of us, everybody was like, we were monitoring the building of the towers. Look at that thing, you know, look at that thing. That's the coolest thing. How did they get that crane up there? Look at that.
I started working in September of '69, pouring all the concrete. It was amazing to be working on the 2 tallest buildings in the world. My kids call them Dad's Towers, because naturally I told them I built them. I was very proud of it.
I remember showing my son them and saying, you know, this is what an American is all about. I mean, look at these great buildings that they build. And really, quite an achievement. I took over command of the World Trade Center in May of 1999. Over 28 months of being there, the place just came alive for me. And one of the intoxicants that the World Trade Center possessed was the sense of power, that this is where it happens. Here, across the street at the Financial Center, and down the street at Wall Street, this is where it happens.
My office is located on the 72nd floor of Tower 1, and it's in the southwest corner of the tower.
I was up in the bunk room changing the sheets.
Made myself a bowl of Wheaties.
I was actually on the Belt Parkway traveling towards One Police Plaza.
I had missed my train. I was a little late.
I had just finished saying mass.
I stopped by my mother's house and because I had to teach.
Made a left on 3rd Avenue going downtown because I was going to pick up some summonses for double parked cars.
Teed off, and I was on the second hole.
I recall checking my beeper at approximately 08:42 hours.
I felt, I did not hear anything, I felt the jerk of the building. Then, within seconds, I saw that there was a ball of fire out of my windows on the south side that I could actually see parabolically falling.
I got on the radio to the dispatcher and told them that the World Trade Center was just hit by a plane and to transmit a second alarm.
And the phone rang. And it was Joe. Dad, turn on the television. I says, what's up? He says, we're on our way down to the Trade Center. A plane just hit there. You going? He goes, yeah. I said, you know anything else? No, I don't know anything yet, Dad. I figured, let me call 132. Trying to find John. And just rang and rang and rang.
I turned my head slightly to the left, and I saw a tremendous fireball in the lobby of building number 1 on the Marriott side. There were people that appeared to be running and standing still in front of the fireball. There appeared that there were people inside of the fireball just kind of free-floating, and there appeared that there were people just kind of circling the fireball as it rushed towards me.
I could see that there were letters and memos that were flying, and they were gently falling. I could actually read some of the, you know, the correspondence that was there. I could see the highlighted areas that were there.
There had to be something like 20 floors of people trapped. And with the smoke and the fire, my thought was, well, they're not going to be able to come down themselves. We're going to have to go get them.
All my years of fire service, I knew what was going on. You know, Joe called me before 9 o'clock. He's on his way down here, truck 2. Should take him about 15 minutes. He'll probably go right to the North Tower. Truck 1 will already be in. What floor would he get on? How long would it take? But I knew Joe was in that tower.
and I heard the chief. I started listening because it sounded kind of strange.
You look at each other and you go, holy cow, I mean, what the hell is going on here?
And I was like, are we gonna go? Let's go.
This is huge, and they're gonna go to work, and I'm gonna miss it.
I was doing my normal, making sure I notified all those special companies.
Almost immediately, the commanders throughout the city began to lock down and close down the city.
So right away, I got on the phone and called my wife, because she works over in Lower Broadway. And I said, there's a fire in the World Trade Center. So she says, what about Dennis? So I says, I'll give him a call. I got somebody from the engine. Answered the phone. And I said, is Oberg working? So she says, the truck went out.
I then began to discuss, what about air support? I couldn't believe I was having this discussion about air support for New York City. It was bizarre, to say the least.
I was just trying to think to myself, okay, this is going to be, it's going to be tough, but it's a fire. We're going to go there, put it out, but I was a little nervous.
We started collecting our tools as if it was a normal high-rise fire. So it means we're bringing additional ropes. We're bringing one additional air cylinder per man.
We have an additional unit in quarters called the high-rise rig. It has a lot of extra tools for fighting high-rise fires.
I was in the high-rise rig with Jeffrey.
I just got done with a 24, and there was still like 10 minutes before the shift was over.
I was mad because I wanted to drive the high-rise.
We looked up, we didn't see anything. I said, okay, everybody ready? All right, ready, set, go. And we sprinted to the front of the building so we wouldn't get hit with any debris. I got to the command post. Joe Pfeiffer was there. Joe literally had 2 phones in his hands, and he's talking on both of them at the same time. People calling in from the fire warden phones upstairs, and he's handling this.
The Trade Center has 99 elevators, but it turned out they weren't working. It meant climbing up the stairs.
It was just about my turn when all of a sudden we hear another loud explosion. A man came running in from the outside, and he yelled out, a second plane has just struck the second tower. You could have heard a pin drop in the lobby. And Jerry Nevins from Rescue 1 looked at me. He says, we may not live through this.
Everybody got off the rig with all their equipment. We had a brief little huddle. I just told the guys, look, we just stay together and watch out for each other. I went to the first chief I saw, and he gave us orders. He told us to wait for another engine company and go to the 23rd floor.
Certainly it was very difficult to give some of these assignments out. You could tell that there was a look in some of these officers' eyes that they might not come back down again.
Then it was my turn. And I went up to Deputy Chief Pete Hayden. I said, Chief, you know a second plane just hit the second tower. And he just closed his eyes and shook his head. He said, I know. Just go upstairs, do the best you can.
So we went around to the B staircase. We took the B staircase. It was the center staircase in the core. And as we approached the staircase, people were coming down, and a lot of people were injured. There was skin coming off people's bodies, and
we made a U-turn, parked the rig, met up with Lieutenant McGlynn and Bobby Bacon and John Drum.
The chief came up to us and said, all right, put your gear on, you're going in. And which was a surprise to me because with this rig, we're not the first people who go in usually.
The lieutenant told us, there's jumpers, so, everybody look up. On the count of 3, we're going to go. So I just looked up, and I didn't see anybody coming, and I said, well, let's go, let's run. We were directed to proceed up the B stairwell. They said, basically, take the B stairwell, walk up, see what you can do.
So at that point, we proceeded to climb stairs.
I was just trying to focus on the point that where, you know, I just saw this horrific fire above, and we're climbing up 84 flights to get to where the fire is.
Then the phone started lighting up.
We're just getting companies from all over the place, all 5 boroughs coming in.
The Bronx started sending their people to North Manhattan and to Queens. Queens started sending their people to Brooklyn. Brooklyn was sending the people over the bridge.
So everything is just happening so fast.
6 trucks and 3 battalions are responding to various staging points. Are you ready to write the identities? Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
You know, I figured we're excited, we're all up, we're pumped, we're ready to go down there. Like everyone else, all the other firemen in the city, everybody wants to go there.
50 engines, 64.
They were calling, you know, can we go, you know, and the supervisor said, you're supposed to send so many, and that's it.
Around 9:15, the tone alarm goes off, and we're being dispatched to 43rd Street and Lexington Avenue for a pedestrian with his foot stuck in a turnstile. I'm looking at the ticket, and I'm like, this is crazy. I said, we can't possibly, this is where we're going.
This was the biggest fire in fire department history, and I wasn't going to miss it. I got a phone call. It was from the Fire Operations Center. It says, you got to go to Shea Stadium and set up a staging area.
I mean, people are knocking on the doors, pointing to the smoke. They're all pointing to us to go, like, you know, it's down there, like we didn't know.
We're 15 blocks away. Let's go. And the guy in charge says, goes, no, everybody stand fast.
All right, all units stand by. Ladder 15 and ladder 15.
So now I'm kind of pissed because I feel helpless.
So I remember saying to Ronnie, okay, let's go. You know, it's going to be an all-dayer, you know. And we went down and got our gear. We threw it in a car, and we just sped down. We drove down almost to the corner where the South Tower is. It got hit. That's when the South Tower got hit. And then we went along the building. And I remember I seen stairs, and I said, Ronnie, there's stairs here. And he said, no, follow me. And all I could think at the time was, wait a minute, I'm the boss. But you know how somebody says something with authority? It's the way he said it.
Ronnie Buka was a very unique fire marshal. He was in special forces. He was in an intelligence unit. You would never know how much he knew and what he was into. Never know.
It was a family joke that I would get telephone calls, and the phone call would start with, honey, guess where I am? And that was my clue. Okay, he's injured at a job. He's at one of the hospitals. And then it would be up to me, is it Bellevue, is it St. Vincent's, to try and figure out where he was.
His specialty was terrorism. He was a very good investigator. In '93, he was in Rescue 1, and he went to the World Trade Center. He told everyone that the World Trade Center was going to be a target of terrorism.
After the bombing attack in 1993, he always said to me, they're going to come back for that building because they didn't feel that they did it right. They wanted to do a lot more damage than what was done. They will be back. They're going to come back.
Ronnie had made himself familiar with every facet of those buildings, how they were constructed, what was in the buildings, what were the weak points of the buildings.
The first we knew was Ronnie had called and said, a plane went into the World Trade Center, I'm on my way down there. And I had said to him, be careful. And then I waited a couple seconds and I said, no, be careful. And that was my conversation with him. And he would always try and call to the family. If he knew that we weren't going to be able to get a hold of him, he would always try and give a quick call, whether it was fire department or military or whatever, just so we wouldn't worry. So I assumed he went on to his business there, and we had been married almost 25 years. We didn't need a lot of language between us.
We went to a certain stairwell and we just started heading up. And I remember it was up in the 30s. one of the last things I said to Ronnie was, "You're killing me, I gotta rest." You know, 'cause he was always a flight ahead of me, he's in great shape. But now when we got up to about the 50th floor, there was no more people coming down. And Ronnie was like 2 flights ahead of me. And I remember seeing this woman on the landing, and she had her arms out, and she was bleeding, and she saw the turnout coat, and she just did one of these, and she's going, and I had to grab her. And I remember yelling to Ronnie, "I'll be back. I gotta take her down." Well, I started helping her down with 10 flights, and on the 40th floor, a fireman opened the door to the stairwell, and he said, "I've got an elevator. You need it?" I said, "Yeah."
I'm emphatic about keeping my people together as a group because it's so easy to get lost in a high-rise building fire. And these are the 2 biggest high-rise buildings in New York City. I want to be like a mother hen. I want to look around and I want to see 5 ladder 6 helmets with me. If I don't see that, we're going to stop and I'm going to find you.
When we got to the 22nd floor, I didn't want to bring, you know, a lot of people up to 23 and create any more confusion on the floor that I thought would be a command post or operations post. I was looking around for this command post and I couldn't find it.
Me and Bobby Bacon went into an office to get a drink of water, and you heard debris falling, and we were right by the glass window, so we started walking towards to get out of the office.
And the whole building shook.
So we started running towards the stairway, then it stopped, and I looked at him and I laughed. I was like, "Where are we running? You know, if this thing's coming down, you know, there's nowhere to go."
I ran to the north windows, and all I could see was this white cloud of dust just pressed up against the glass. I couldn't see a thing. And I just look at my guys and I says, "All right, let's go. If that tower can go, this one can go."
It's gone! The whole tower! It's gone! Holy crap! They knocked the whole freaking thing down! The whole tower's down, too.
Everything started to fall apart. My daughter-in-laws are calling me. "What do you think the boys are?" I says, "They're all right." I said, "They're 2 good kids. They're good." My wife came home. She knew something was wrong. And we're sitting there and she's saying, "You're not telling me everything." I said, "Mama, I'll tell you everything. I don't know anything." I said, "We just know that the boys are at the World Trade Center."
Everybody responded. The entire emergency service unit, whoever was working that day, responded. We were put into teams.
They had asked us to respond down a side street to a helicopter.
The call was made that there'd be no roof operations at that time. The fire was too much out of control.
All of a sudden, I started thinking that the bridges are closed, the Manhattan's shut down, roads are blocked, emergency vehicles only. I started thinking that, well, there it is, and there's the water, and there's the new boat I bought, and this would be a way of getting in there.
I figured I'd go to 36 engine, but when I got up there along the boulevard, it was all backed up with traffic. So I immediately called my brother.
Like mental telepathy, the phone rang, and it was TJ on the other end. And he says, "Is that boat of yours running?" And I says, "It's getting ready." I says, "Let's go." Get hooks, axes, oxygen bottles, medical gear, gloves, helmets, and we all took off very apprehensive, you know, looking at this in the distance and starting out by boat to get there. We continued out Rockaway Inlet, under the Marine Parkway Bridge.
Through the Rockaways, under the Verrazano Bridge, and then straight into the Battery Park area.
Police boats and Coast Guard boats were blocking the harbor. I told the fellas, put on the fire helmet, put one of your jackets on, and get up in the front. And when we got close enough, we pointed to the fire helmet and said, we're going there. I could see the atrium of the World Trade Center, the big glass dome, and I could see the back of it collapsed. I could see buildings with, whole corners missing off it, steel beams hanging out of buildings. All of a sudden, I felt the, shakiness of course, you started to now realize the massiveness of what has happened here in front of us. And I thought to myself, what did I do? I just dropped these 5 men off, and did I drop them off to their death? Was it worth it?
I sort of remember seeing a chief, and he was telling us to evacuate the building. I told all the guys around me, I said, okay, go, get out.
And I remember thinking as coming down the stairs, now how are we going to fight this fire? This building is 110 stories. Now what are we going to do? Are we just going to let this building burn? But that wasn't my immediate problem. My immediate problem was to get my guys out of that building.
At this point, we're running down the stairs until we came to a point where there were civilians. We were giving them hits of our air.
And we probably made it to like the 5th floor where ladder 6 was helping an elderly woman.
We came upon a woman named Josephine Harris, who was standing in a doorway near the stairway. She was a 59-year-old woman, and she has fallen arches. She doesn't walk well on a good day, and this greatly slows our descent.
I got caught up with some people that were having problems getting down the stairs. Inside my head was screaming, I wanted to get out of this building, but I was helping these people. And once I was with somebody, they were going one step at a time. Therefore, I was going one step at a time. And I was counting, I was looking at the numbers of the floors. It would be like 19, 18, 17, and I just wanted to get out of that building,
Finally, we got down to the lobby, and Lieutenant McGlynn comes up.
I did a quick roll call just to account for everybody.
And he counts 1, 2, 3, and the 4th one's missing, which was John Drum.
He's like, where was the last time you saw him? We're like at the 5th floor.
I told my guys to stay there, and I said, I'm gonna go check on John. I had said, you shouldn't go alone, so I went with him. Walked into the stairwell, walked up a couple flights.
The lieutenant was 2 floors below me. It's when I ran into the guys from 6th truck, and I'd asked them, is anyone else coming down? And they're like, no, we're it.
Once we made it to the 4th floor, Josephine Harris fell to the floor, and she started crying. She said she couldn't go anymore. She couldn't go on.
Jeffrey starts walking back into the staircase. I follow him.
I yelled up to the lieutenant, and I said to him, Lou, you coming? And he says, yeah, I'll be right down.
The clock is banging away like a church bell in the back of my head. We gotta get out of here. We gotta keep moving. We gotta get out of here. And so I broke into the 4th floor, looking for a sturdy chair that we could put her on, and we could pick her up and we could run with her.
James and I were waiting. The chief was right with us, Chief Prunty.
And I don't know what made me turn around and realize that, this isn't working out. We're just gonna have to drag her. As I'm running back, I'm thinking, maybe this building isn't going to collapse. It's been about 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
Well, this is the hard part.
I think the first thing I heard was the noise, and it was a roar, a tremendously loud roar. And I knew something bad was going to happen.
We turned, we started running up West Street. And as we were running, I looked over my right shoulder and I'm looking up. And I'm looking up at the television antenna on top of building number 1. And I'm watching it as I'm running along, and it just ever so slightly seemed to start swaying. I said to myself, Jesus.
the floor almost became ripple-like, almost like it had waves. And I lunged for the door, and initially I couldn't open it. And it took a second pull to open the door. I must have caught it at a time where things lined up and I was able to open it. And I just dove for the stairway, and I just crawled up into a ball waiting for something big to hit me.
I just kind of hit the floor, and I rolled to the wall. And at that point, basically, I just began to say a few prayers.
The stairwell just erupted into like a hurricane, a sandstorm. Knocked my helmet off, knocked me over. So I dove down from the 3rd floor landing to the 2.5 landing, just figuring, down is the way out.
You heard metal twisting, and then you heard from far away, boom, boom, as the floor started falling.
And the chief ran. And James and I stayed where we were, and I just saw the look on James's face.
I'm like, my wife's not going to be able to handle this.
I just grabbed him, and I threw him on the ground, and I got down next to him, and he was just worried about his wife.
Jeffrey's like, nothing's going to happen to us. We're going to be okay. And it's getting louder and quicker.
A complete calm came over me, and I just said, I said, relax. I said, nothing is going to happen to us. As each floor, and you heard each floor coming down, it was the most amazing sound that you could possibly hear.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, this is it. That's 36 years gone, and didn't do much but work and play around a little bit. Figured something big would hit me, knock me out, and I wouldn't feel anything at that point. I figured it would be quick.
I was on the staircase. I remember the railing was to my left, so I got as close in as I could. I grabbed my helmet, because I knew that was going to disappear from the wind, and I just got down as low as I could. I tried to crawl in my fire helmet is what I tried to do. If I could have got in there, I would have. Then I started getting hit with, it was pretty heavy objects, and that's when I figured I was going to die there. I remember hoping that it would just be fast, and then it got dark, and then all of a sudden it all stopped. There was no more noise. There was no more wind. It was very, very silent.
I was running on VC Street. There was a police officer who came in next to me. We ran together, and he looked at me and says, "Father, can I go to confession?" And I said, "Well, this is an act of war, isn't it?" He said, "Yes, it is." I said, "Well, then I'm going to give everyone general absolution," which I did.
There was no big tunnel with a white light at the end. There was no story of my life, and all the people that are going to miss me and I'm going to miss and this, that, the other thing. It was just me saying to myself, this is it, this is it, this is it. Once we realized what it was, we went running back to 47 truck, parked in front of One Liberty. The last thing I saw was this big square across from One Liberty Plaza with a hole in the middle of it. And I remember looking at that while I'm crouched down in the rig. And then I couldn't see anything anymore. And everything just went black. Nothing big hit me. It was just all everything was pulverized. All the little dust and little rocks.
I don't think I'm one of them. You okay, sir?
So I had to pick my hood up and breathe through that. Little breaths, because I couldn't. I took one deep breath when that dust cloud hit, and I started coughing and choking. Until finally, it started to settle. And then I was able to make out that Art Deco thing across from One Liberty Plaza again. And I was alive, So we all got up, we all looked at each other, made sure everybody was still with us. Everybody was there. We said, all right, let's go. Let's find what we can do.
Now we start to hear the stuff over the radio from the firefighters, how they were trapped.
We wish you could do something.
They were trying to give information of where they were and That was. It was heart-wrenching. It was one guy, some piece of the building had fallen on him. He just, kept saying, somebody help me, somebody help me. It was just undescribable. I never experienced anything like that before. Just hearing these people, I think it was the worst when you didn't hear them anymore. Then you really thought, the worst.
I kept thinking it was just the top 30 floors came down, not the whole building. But you couldn't see anything. And I remember seeing Joe Brozzi. I said, Joe, we got to go back. Ronnie's in there. And Joe said, well, I'm with you, let's go. But the chief was standing there, and he said, no, he's gone. And I was like, what do you mean he's gone? He's not gone. He said, the building's gone. And that's when it, finally hit me, because I'm thinking we can go back in there for him.
My father was on the phone with people he knew in the fire department, and he said to me, there's a problem. I said, I'm not going to worry about it until I know there's something to worry about. Because I really trusted Ronnie, and I trusted Ronnie's abilities. And Ronnie, even among his friends in Special Forces and Rescue, had a reputation as a survivor.
Everybody said that there's fire on the 74th floor, and that's where we were headed. We said, we'll go up there and see who we could pull out, And I know that Ronnie made it up there by the time I got out. Because they found him a month later, but they did find civilians around him, so he was getting people out, He was doing what what he's trained to do.
The fellows don't wait, they go in. That's their instinct. There's a problem in there, we need to go in there and we need to get these people out. I feel that everything in Ron's life prepared him for that day.
She's such a strong person. I know I should call her more, but I feel I'm not guilty, but it's just, I don't know, a weird feeling, it doesn't seem like I was half the man her husband was, and, why did, how come he didn't make it, Doesn't make sense. I don't know.
On September 11th, John Perry was turning in his 10 that day, and which is what we call our shield.
John Perry, who was literally retiring from the New York City Police Department. He had signed his paperwork, left it on the desk on the 10th floor of headquarters when the buildings were struck.
Jean left early because she had a breakfast that she had to prepare for her boss in her office. It was on the 81st floor inside the North Tower. I prepared her the breakfast I do every morning, prepare her breakfast, get her ready. I had to be professional. I was trying to get over to help people, but in the same time, my wife was in the North Tower.
I look and there's a guy in a trench coat and he has the NYPD bike shirt on, and he's like behind me looking out the window. I was like, I don't know who, I've never seen him before. And then I see a captain come up, and I speak to the captain. It's Captain Pearson. He just had gotten there, and the guy was with him, and that was John Perry.
He was signing off from the police department. He was leaving early. I think he was going to go into some sort of legal defense work.
John was ready to maybe settle down, move to the suburbs someday, and become the typical suburban father.
He had made friends with one of the Port Authority cops, and they had given him a helmet. And so I thought that was
typical John, making friends and figuring out the different angles on something.
I started to go over toward, like I said, the North Tower. I went into the Deutsche Bank first. I ran into about 6 employees, and they're like walking zombies. A couple of them all have blood on their face. They didn't expect to collapse, so I evacuated them. I took them to the back. But I want to still get over to where Gene is. And I go back outside, and I run into Mel Hayes.
I saw his front piece, and I didn't recognize him at first with all the stuff that was on him. And I just said, I yelled out, "Hey, 31." And then he said, "Mel, it's Danny," you know, so it was just good to see him. It was good to see him.
A police officer came running down the street. He says, "The helicopter overhead just radioed to us down here that the first tower was going to go." And I looked at Mel, and we didn't even have time to say anything. With that, the rumble starts again. And Mel wanted to run down the street, and I just grabbed him and said, "No, don't run, just come with me." And we went inside the Deutsche Bank because there was some big cement columns. We just held each other, and I says, "You know, my wife was up there." He goes, "Oh, yeah, I know, Dan, I know." I says, "Well, I gotta get over there. I gotta find where she is. I don't know where I'm gonna start."
He was searching, even though his wife, you know, was in peril. He was doing his job. He was doing his job, looking for people.
I could see the shadow of the debris coming down. And then you felt this tremendous wind. And you heard the boom, 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 boom. And everything was completely black. I couldn't see John at this point. I couldn't hear anyone. And for a moment, I thought I was the only person possibly alive. I said, I just came here to help someone. And here it is. I'm seeing my end.
I was walking in a daze in Chinatown, and this gentleman stopped me and asked me if I needed anything, and I said, "Yes, please, I need a phone." I said, "My husband's a fireman. I need to get word to him that I'm okay." Not too many people were coming down after us. We were pretty much, Dan had always said, in case of an extreme emergency, go to a firehouse.
Sometime in the afternoon, I learned that there were 22 officers unaccounted for. I thought that the number must surely be higher. Turns out it only got higher by 1, and that was John Perry. No one knew that John went down there.
I'm sure he went in there, determined to help, to do all he can, and have a great story to tell afterward. And from what I hear from Tim Pearson, whatever happened, happened quickly.
Where they found him was basically exactly where I said he would be. If he would have made it maybe another 20, 30 feet, he may have been able to make it out of the building.
I went back over toward the Chinatown firehouse, and I walked in, and I went over to the room, and I opened the door up, and I don't even recall what we said. We just looked at each other, and we just grabbed each other and hugged each other. You know, it was a beautiful reunion.
Cried, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Mike Curtin, Paul Talty, Tommy Langone, and Vinny Dan, Rodney Gillis, Walter Weaver, Jerome Dominguez, John Coughlin, Police Officer Suarez, Police Officer Morris Smith. They're not here anymore, and I don't understand why. That's the hardest thing, not knowing, you know, why.
When you talk about heroes, being on the field with those men and women, on September the 11th is the greatest honor I have ever had in my life. And they are the true heroes of September 11th. I was just graced to be there with them and to see how they performed. It was a great honor. It's a day I'll never forget.
This could not be Manhattan. There is no way this was Manhattan. White, ash, paper.
There were car fires burning everywhere. A lot of cars had been tossed just by the blast of the building coming down. Worked my way over to 6 Engine. In 33 years, I've never seen firefighters look like that. They just had a blank, full-on look on their face.
So I got down to where Frank Fellini was, and I walked over and I said, Frank, what do you want me to do? He said, what about Pete Gansey? What about Bill Feehan? And he said, we don't know. We just don't know. He says, but I do know. He says that Ladder 6 has been transmitting Maydays. He says, get a radio and find out how we can get these guys.
My first inclination was to find out who we still had. And I gave a roll call, and I was thrilled that all my guys were accounted for. Josephine Harris was okay. Lieutenant Mickey Cross from Engine 16 was accounted for. He was at the bottom of the pile. There was a fireman Bacon from Engine 39 that was down there, and a Lieutenant McGlynn from Engine 39. We heard over the radio that 2 members from Engine 39 were okay, but they were cut off.
James F. Tiamides and Jeff Caniglio were on the floor below me. They had contacted me. Bob Bacon was with me. He was a little banged up.
I finally heard Lieutenant McGlynn calling for me. And since I was up in the air, I actually tapped him on the shoulder with my foot.
I said, Jeffrey, you okay? He's like, yeah. I was like, anything hit you? He's like, no, I don't think so. And he repeats the question to me. I was like, no, I don't think so.
We hugged each other and we were like, very excited that we were still alive.
I turn on the light. I'm like, okay, this beam's resting over here. This is resting on the door. Whoa, big hole, move to the left.
And the door that I had opened had stopped the landing from falling on top of us.
Which basically saved us from getting squished.
For some reason, we were saved, and and you wonder why, that it was you.
I couldn't move too well. I was pretty encased in, and kind of like being in an eggshell. That's the best way to describe it. So I was pushing, and the last place I pushed was above my head. I figured that would be the last, that would be the worst place, but I says, what the heck? So I pushed above, and the debris cleared. I tried my light. It didn't work, and then I realized my eyes were encased. I couldn't see. I couldn't open my eyeballs. I yanked my glove off, and I stuck my finger in my mouth, and I started peeling the debris away from my eyes, and I was able to open my eyes. And then I scraped the contacts on the light, and I turned the light, and the light went on. So now I had sight, and I had my light. So things were starting to look up.
My initial thought was, after the collapse had stopped, that, okay, let's dust ourselves off and continue down the stairs and continue out. And one of my guys yelled up, he says, it's no good. We can't get out. So I started giving out Mayday messages.
We weren't getting through to anybody. Talking to Chief Prunte, he was maybe 10 feet away from us. We can communicate with him without a radio. And he's like, I'm pinned, guys, and, I need to get out of here quick.
We couldn't get to him. He was telling us that he was dying. And we were telling him that, hang on, Chief, they're coming to get us. Even though I didn't really believe it, I wanted him to believe it. So he would be calmer and then let him know that we were there so that he wasn't going to die alone.
We forced the door, crawled in basically as far as we could, but there was no way getting to him. So I talked to him and I said, hang in there, Chief, that the men are coming.
But there wasn't much we could do.
And everybody's giving Maydays, and finally somebody responded.
And then I hear from Deputy Chief Nick Visconti, Operations Post to Ladder 6, Operations Post to Ladder 6. And I get on the air, this is Ladder 6, and Nick has an unmistakable voice.
Jay, we're going to get you out. Just tell me where you are. Tell me what's going on. Now, at this time, there's 4 or 5 battalion chiefs around me. There's hundreds of firefighters standing there. And I said, where are you?
I'd say the North Tower B stairway, where I'm on between the 2nd and the 4th floors.
And everybody looked at me. Because we knew there was no Tower 1. I said, okay, Jake, I need directions. I need you to help me out here. We're not too familiar with the building.
And I says, okay, we came in off of West Street. We went through the glass doors. We made a right, then our first left, and the B stairway is the first stairway on the left.
And it's somewhere during this conversation, somebody jumped in on the radio and said, where the hell is Tower 1?
I was thinking, this guy doesn't even know where the North Tower is.
I just kept talking. I didn't want him to, I didn't know what he knew. I didn't know what I should do, but I just said, I'll just keep going. I said, just tell me where you are within the building. He gave me a location. Okay. I said, I got people coming. We're going to find you. We'll get you out of there.
We're coming to get you. But it's going to be a while. So we just played the waiting game.
We had an ESU van burning a block away, blowing off ammunition. We had units coming in wanting to go in, so we're trying to corral them into a spot. And out of the crowd comes this, I didn't recognize him right away. This guy starts walking toward me, kind of a muscular guy wearing a blue jacket and a hard hat and carrying a crowbar, and it's my brother Mike. My brother Mike's been retired a couple of years. And he says to me, he says, Bob, who's working? So I look at him and I says, Mike, the Twin Towers fell down. Everybody's working. He's like, no. Joe, Tim, Matt, who's working? And believe it or not, for the first time, it was the first time I thought that, oh yeah, I saw Matt on the train station, but what about Joe and Tim? You're kind of trying to hold off panic, but I knew that we had to lose dozens, maybe hundreds of firefighters. We lost thousands of people, but I never really thought about that. My God, I must have lost tons of friends and maybe even my brothers.
I ran into my brother Mike, and we were so relieved to see each other, and the first thing I said is, did you see Bob? And he acknowledged that he saw Bob. A tremendous amount of relief came over me right away. But somewhere along the line, I wanted to see Bob, too.
First thing that hits me at the site was silence. It was incredibly silent. We're not hearing pass alarms, which are the little alarms on the side of your bottle. We're not hearing screams, help. We're not hearing anything. I see my brother Joe. And I'm like, oh, thank God. He's like, oh, Bob, and we hug.
And I was relieved all over again.
He says, have you seen Tim? I says, no. I said, I saw Mike and I saw Matt this morning. But every SOC unit that was there, you hear him coming across as missing. Whole units, not people in the company, whole units.
Tim was with Squad 252, which is a special operations company.
He wasn't going to be happy with just an engine company or a truck company. He's going to have to be where everything happens. He's going to have to play with the toys and play with the tools. He's going to have to get all the training.
And even if Tim had gotten off early, for whatever reason, he would have turned around and went back. See, me and my brothers went to a lot of fires together. We all were on the job at the same time. We all recognized each other's voices in the smoke. My brother Mike, my brother Bob, my father, all of us. But Tim, when we would go to fires, there'd be tough spots that you'd try to get to, and Tim would already be there, finding the way out, knowing exactly which window to go into. He could squeak through like a snake. He could get past the dangerous situation and say, how did you get there so fast? I thought I was doing pretty good.
Joe says, I talked to his guys. I'm like, yeah, and? He says, Tim was working. So we knew he was missing. My heart sunk, you know. But I also knew that I was part of a great tragedy, that there was going to be a lot of people in my position, A lot of wives, a lot of sons, a lot of grandsons. I mean, I was one of many, many people. And in one way, that was a comfort. Another way, it was much harder because I couldn't go to somebody and say, oh, my God, I lost my brother. Because any one of them could turn around and say, so did I.
We figured that he probably got up pretty high. You know, get up towards where the rescue guys were. You know, make sure everybody got out, not just the civilians. We're not leaving till I see the last face. That's the kind of guy that he was, even if he knew he was in danger. We'll make it, we'll get down, but I'm still not leaving till I see the last bunch of guys. And that's what we figured he was doing. Almost positive that's what he was doing.
I started trying to call Ladder 105, where my son was assigned, and I wasn't getting him. I wasn't getting any communication back. I tried every channel on the handy-talkie, but nothing. And then I ran into guys from my son's firehouse, and they brought me over to Ladder 105's truck, and there was an I-beam down over the cab. I found one of my son's shoes, his low quarters that they wear around the firehouse, in the cab. And we dug and searched all around there. Deep down, I knew that, God, how anybody can come out of that alive. Just looking at it, the devastation. He was a lot smarter than I was. Went off to college, did well, and graduated college and became a CPA. The hours are late. He used to come home 11, 12 o'clock. And I guess he looked back at the time that I spent with him and his sister and my wife. I mean, he took a big cut in pay, but he was thinking of the future with his family. September 10th, he was in the firehouse, working a night tour. At about 11 o'clock, he had called my wife. She asked him, she said, did you make the right decision, Dan? And he said, yeah. You happy? He said, yeah. And with that, an alarm come in. And he said, I love you, Mom. She said, I love you. He left. That was it.
We didn't know how many people were missing. One of the tough things that day was family members coming up to you and saying, have you seen my son? Have you seen my brother? Have you seen my father? And you just, I don't know where they are.
My first tour was July 4th. We're in the middle of roll call, and the tone alarms go off. Fire around the corner. 8 minutes. First call was a fire. Get back to the firehouse, and the phone rings. It's my brother. What you have? I tell him, are you kidding me? He's all upset because he's at work and he doesn't catch any fires.
Jonathan was a young buff from when he was 5, 6 years old, because he went to the volunteer firehouse with me all the time. And the only thing he wanted to be was be like Dad. And go to Rescue 2. He would call if there was something big happening in the city. He would call and say, Dad, there's a third, there's a fourth. He would always... He called that morning. Immediately, it was they were up, of course. And he said, Dad, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. With that, I could hear the tones in the background go off. And... he said, we're going. And I said, John, just be careful. And he said, okay, Dad. And they left.
I called my father, and he said, we got to go in. So I went and picked him up, and we went in. just digging and trying to stretch lines to put out fires, and there was no water. You find a body here, you find a body there. There was so much to do, but yet you felt like you weren't doing a thing.
To just say at this point that I was just helter-skelter looking for my son, no, I'm looking for whoever I'm going to find, and I'm going to pray that it's going to be my son.
It wasn't until probably sometime in the afternoon where I started worrying. You know, I haven't seen him yet. I haven't seen anyone from his house yet.
I saw guys from 288, his house, coming at me, which was an absolute sigh of relief to see them. But as you approach them, the faces, we made contact, eye contact, and immediately on making the eye contact, the heads all went down to the ground with that look that they didn't want to look at me. So I said to myself, this is not a good scenario. So I went up to them, I said, any word about anything? And they said, the whole company's missing.
I turned around and there's my father. And he looks at me and says, where's John? And he just put this little smile on his face. He said, he's missing. And for a second, I thought he was kidding. I said, you gotta be kidding me. He goes, you turn around, all right, let's go get him. And then you just look, where the hell could he be? And then look at the size of this thing. And all the guys in my company, we're gonna find him, we're gonna do as much as we can, and just stretching hose lines and just digging a little and moving stuff out of the way, you know, as much as you can.
You couldn't pull us out there with a team of pit bulls. Nobody was taking us out.
I saw Joe Higgins before I found out about my brother. He had said something out loud about his brother being missing. So just to know that his brother was missing, and now, you know, where's John? He's got to be here somewhere. How could I leave him, you know? As long as I was there, I felt like I was keeping him company, you know, just to let him know that we were going to come and get him.
I hated going home. I hated going home. I hated it. Hated it. Did it, went down a block. 1,000 people, you know. Grandson came out. Said, do you have Dad? Told him no. I said, we'll find him. Well, it wasn't the best scenario. And that was a day that I lived for like 2 more weeks, every day with my grandson. He would come out happy. Didn't see Dad. He would ask, did you find him? Say no. And I guess, I don't know, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks, he stopped asking.
I was in my office at 30 Rockefeller Plaza, and my personal office, which is on the 56th floor, looked south. I actually was there and saw the building collapse. It was hard to believe that what I saw was actually happening.
I turned around, there were hundreds of firefighters and officers. I said, pick 5 guys. Guys you know. I want people you know.
I said, Chief, where are they? And he says, they're in tower number 1 in the B stairway. I said, great. I said, you know where that is? And he said, no. And I said, I don't know where it is either.
I actually used to live down on Maiden Lane between Broadway and Nassau. So I told him, I said, Lou, I know this area. It was like, any questions? Don't worry about it. I'll tell you where we're going.
And we all went up this ladder, 30 feet, and we got to the veranda. That's the first place we saw one of our guys dead. And he knew we were going to see that, but it was still tough. I mean, in my 15 years, I mean, I've never been at a fire that we lost a guy.
There was one company that was stretching line to one building, and there was another company stretching booster line to put out engines that were on fire. You know, you never thought you'd see a fire engine on fire, you know, and the fire engines crushed, you know, trucks destroyed.
One of the chiefs had a bullhorn, and this thing had a siren. So we said every 20 minutes or so, hit the siren. We couldn't hear it. It was too far.
We found a bottle of water. We found one bottle of water, and we opened it up and we started passing it around, you know, and everybody taking a sip of water. Just like you see it reminded me of a movie once, so I think it was Humphrey Bogart, where they had a canteen of water and they all, and that's exactly what we were doing.
So we made our way where I thought would be where the North Tower stood. The officer looks at me, he goes, "Cassidy, where are we?" And I looked around and I said, I don't know. And I couldn't tell him. And that, I don't know, that affected me too, just saying that I didn't know where we were when I know this area like the back of my hand. But I couldn't tell him what street we're on. No idea.
All I saw was an open area with a lot of steel collapsed in it. I said, this is the courtyard. At that point, we asked the chief to hit the siren, and we heard it. But it seemed so far away. I said, it can't be that far.
There was voids and crevices and holes, and we crawled around, I don't know for how long.
And then at that point, that was when the lights started coming in.
And I looked at that and I said, guys, there used to be 106 stories above us. Now I see sunshine.
So it began to realize that the rest of this building is gone, is down.
I think it must have been Chief Jonas. He must have yelled out. He said to us that we have an opening and try to make your way up here.
I knew we were close because we were getting closer to the siren. We had him on the radio. He says, you call out. So I screamed before he finished saying it. And he says, oh, you're right on the other side of that steel. We just had to now climb up over this steel and back down again. And you could see them walking out. They had set up a rope.
One by one, we started sending people out. Sent Mickey Cross out.
One person would go, and they were able to climb the beam, get onto the other staircase, and then get to the opening. So it started working, and that's what we did.
We sent Fireman Bacon out from Engine 39.
Lieutenant McGlynn stayed because he wasn't going to leave until James and Jeff were out.
All these guys are coming out.
But I remember the third guy to come out. Because the third guy was my instructor in the academy, Lieutenant Mickey Cross.
I remember when I was coming out, somebody threw me a rope.
I looked out and I said, Mickey!
And that turned out to be a friend of mine. Oddly enough, it was Terrence Cassidy. Tiernot Cassidy. I call him TC.
I reached down and I grabbed his arm to help him up. And when he comes up, all he has on his nose, he has a little scratch on his nose. Not a cut.
Until I actually came out of the debris and saw the landscape, I was astonished.
And he just said, which way out?
I found Jimmy McGlynn, a friend of mine he's a lieutenant in Engine 39. I said, Jimmy, what do you got?
I still had my two guys below on the floor below that I wasn't sure how we were going to get out of there. The only way to get to them from what I saw was to go through this crack in the floor.
I remember looking with the light. I was like, well, we see a light. I was like, there's no way we can fit through that hole.
I said to Lou, do you think we can get out that way? He says, yeah, I think you can get out that way. I said, well, do you think you could fit through the hole? And he says, well, I think I could fit through the hole. I said, well, then James could probably fit through the hole. I said, but Lou, you got the fattest man on the firehouse here. I said, you better bring in some welders. And that's where we all started laughing, and which was the intent. I'm not the fattest man on the firehouse.
I started hitting the walls with the Halligan. I'm hitting steel. I'm hitting the standpipe. Now I got a little void next to my corner. And I called down to one of the guys. I said, can you climb up one story to where I'm working? And that guy was up there like that. I couldn't believe how fast he got up there.
I was able to bend the metal beams out of the way enough that I could squeeze through there.
I said, okay, come on down. You do what he did.
He helped me out, and at that point he asked me,
tell me where the chief is. I'm going down this hole, and I'm like, God, just keep it open a little bit longer. Because we had to go down. We had to check on Chief Prunty. He wasn't dead long, but he was gone. We worked on him for almost 2 hours to get him out. They're screaming at us on the radio, you got to get out of there. We had to give it up. And I said, okay, guys, we're up. We're out of here. So said a prayer. So we'll come back get you tomorrow. And then we headed out of there.
I wanted to find John Drum to make sure that he was okay. He just basically made it out. I spoke to him later. He told me that he looked back at me, thought that I had seen him, and just kept going. He felt very bad afterwards that he didn't know that we went back for him. But I told him that may have saved our life, because we don't know where we would have been if we hadn't gone back into the stairwell. So in effect, that might have saved our lives.
I remember the nurse saying, you want to call your wife? I was like, yeah, that'd be a good idea. She's like, I'll let her know you're here, and then I'll give you the phone. I could hear my wife yelling in the background, screaming, she's, not knowing, what was wrong. She's like, you better talk to her.
I called my mother, and my mother made it sound like, it was an everyday conversation at first. She was like, oh, Jeffrey, how you doing? And I'm like, oh, fine, Ma, how are you? And then she called my father. She goes, Joe, Jeff's on the phone. And that's when she started crying.
First person I called is my mother. And, you could tell just from her saying hello, you could tell she was crying all day. I just said, excuse me. I just said, I'm alive. I didn't say that, but I broke down crying when I said, Mom, it's me, I'm alive. And then she broke down crying, of course. Lying there in the middle of the street, a big, strong fireman, and crying to Mommy and Daddy. But that's the first time I had to think about, maybe what just happened. The loss that everybody else maybe just went through.
All we kept thinking all along was, well, there must be rescue things going on all over the site. There's 16 acres of buildings here. Probably 100 stairways. There's things going on all over the place with guys getting out. But nothing was going on. There wasn't anybody else coming out of those buildings. How they survived is unbelievable.
Maybe one day some engineer will be able to explain that, because I have no idea why that happened.
We're sitting down drinking water and coffees and whatever else people are passing out now. And Mickey comes walking up the West Side Highway, and I said, Mickey, what are you still doing here? He said, where am I going to go? And he said, did I see you earlier? I was like, yeah, I took you out. And he was like, was that you? I was like, yeah, it was me. So, but he was foggy. I mean, you still look at him, he still looks a little foggy. But he still had the blood dripping down his nose. Still had his bunker gear on. And, that's a fireman. He's not leaving. Everybody was out. As the hours turned into days, and days and days,
and there were no sounds, no rescue. I knew that my brother was gone.
My first commitment was I was going to carry my son out. And if I found other people along the way, that would be a blessing.
My routine was Sunday afternoon, pack a bag, go back to the site. 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, go to the hotel. 6 o'clock, get up, go back to the site, stay till 11, 12 o'clock at night.
My brothers and I worked at the pile day in, day out, like a lot of people did. All looking for brothers, friends, sons. My father said to us, bring them home. Whatever you got to do, just bring them home.
I would go down to the viewing stand with my wife on the 11th of every month. I mean, there were days when I was down there and I'd look up in the sky and it was a clear sky and it would remind me of 9/11 that day. And I would have to leave.
Seeing fathers digging for their sons. Seeing sons digging for fathers. 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, 30 days. They're down there digging for their own kids. It's horrible. And it's nothing you can do.
I go down there just like any other firefighter, and I put on my overalls and a hard hat, and I get a hoe, and I go down to the pit, and I rake the dirt, just like everybody else does. And when I leave the pit and go back to the real world out there, it seems harder outside. It's easier there. I get kind of a peace of mind while I'm there.
The thing that I would always realize would be I know that every one of those guys, no matter what, would not leave me. So, we wouldn't leave them.
Nobody was coming out easy. And you were kind of looking at things around you. Boy, are we going to get out of here?
I hate that place. I'm there only because there are policemen, firefighters working, looking for body parts of people. Not necessarily policemen and firemen, but people.
A great day is when we have taken somebody out of there. That's a great day. And a really great day are those days where we took out 10, 12, 13 bodies. Fire, civilian, PD. What a great, great day that is. But that's what you think about.
My brothers and I were taking a break at the bottom of the hill. And I turned to my one brother, Joe, and I says, this is impossible. I says, we got acres of land here. Tim can be anywhere. I don't think we're going to find him. And my brother Joe was upset. He was really mad.
I told him I got a gut feeling Timmy's coming out next. So I left the hill, and I went back to the firehouse.
Radio screams. It's from Battalion Chief Tommy Richardson. He says, if the Higgins guys are still here, tell them to get back up to the pile. And I says, Tommy, it's Bobby, go ahead. What do you got? And he says, Bobby, come on back up. I says, no, go ahead over there. Tell me what you got. And he's like, just come up. I knew what they probably had.
And no sooner was I in the kitchen 2 minutes did the phone ring, and my brother Bob told me we got Tim. So, of course, I got right back.
I didn't want to look. I says, Tommy, what do you got? And he looks at me, and I know Tommy a long time, and he knew my brother Timmy real, and he points and he says, this is Tim.
I remember seeing some faces, and then I directly made eye contact with my brother Bob. And he was standing there. He looked right at me, and he looked right down at a flag-draped Stokes basket, and he said, that's Tim. And, of course, emotion came over me because I didn't know what to feel. I was kind of happy that we got him, but I was kind of sad that we got him, too. Tim was heavy when we carried him out. You know, he was all there. So to us, it was a tremendous lucky feeling that we got Tim out.
December 11th. I was at home. It was about 11:30, sitting on my couch. I'm going to go nuts. So got in my car and I drove to Great Neck. It was either make a right and go to my house or make a left and go to the volunteer house and sit down and have a couple cups of coffee. Let me just pass by the house and see if anyone's home. I pull in front, all the lights are on. I get out and my mom opens the door. That was quick.
I said, Brendan. He said, yeah, Dad, I just had to come to town. I didn't feel right. I figured I'd come down the block, see if the lights were on, 12 o'clock at night.
My dad likes to think that was John saying, yeah, you just get up and start going home because, you know, he's going to call you.
I said, Brendan, found Jonathan. I said, we'll go in. He said, yep, let's go.
All the guys were lined up already. Like they do for every guy. They line all the guys up and they salute them when we bring their body up. And when we walked down, they saluted my father on the way down. And that was something that touched me, and I know it touched him. I've never seen that down there before. You know, they saluted him on the way down. We got down there, and he was in the Stokes, and he had the flag on him, covered up already, and see the smile on my dad's face? Got on his knee, and he patted him on the back. He said, we got you, buddy. We got you. And to smile for something that horrible, yeah, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. That was probably the greatest day of my life. Being able to carry him up the hill, the emotions, and being able to smile and say, we got you. You weren't going to hide for that long. It was a very, very special day.
I never thought I'd be on that side of a fire department's funeral. You know, it seems strange. We line up. We've got this long blue line, and we all line up. And the caisson comes by, firefighter, flag draped casket, you salute. The families are usually on the other side. They're on the church side of the formation. I never thought I'd be on that.
Closure, I don't even know what that means, to tell you the truth. I think it feels good if you find somebody, but you still never get over it. But I hope they all get something, somehow or another, because I feel lucky that I did, and we did, my family.
Finding my son Joe's body was bittersweet. It was a body. It wasn't Joe. Not finding John's body, so be it. As my grandson said, God must have needed some good cops. Well, he needed some good firemen, too.
I miss my son terribly. I don't know. I just feel so bad for him and for his wife. They were only married 11 and a half months. They were so young, both 28 years old. They had their whole lives ahead of them, all their dreams. I don't know. I don't know why. He was only on 7 months. God. Here I am, 31 years, and I'm talking, relating these stories, and he's gone. Not even recovered. was our first fight together, and it was our last. It's a crazy way of looking at it, though. But I have to understand why. Why? I guess it wasn't my time. I never accepted, but I don't know. I'll think about that for the rest of my life. Rest of my life.
A lot of the senior men are going to want to get out. A lot of senior men's wives are going to be telling them, you don't play catch with airplanes. It's not what you signed on for.
The thing was, it was just a matter of either you jumping left or right as to whether you lived or not.
Everybody above me didn't make it.
Every day is a good day, and I just always wonder why.
And you sort of say to yourself, where's the bill? The bill being, I know you have something else in mind for me. And I'm trying to do the best I can to fulfill that.
You know, I'm not a big believer in fate, but anybody who happened to be working that day had the wrong fate. They were going to go in the building.
You know, like, why was that elevator there? That was, you know, there were no elevators. You know, supposedly there weren't any elevators. There was all these companies in the lobby waiting for the elevator, and there were none. Why did I walk away when I was at Gansey and Chief Gansey and First Deputy Feehan, and I remember like walking away from them. And then the next thing you know, they said it's coming down. We ran, and they got killed. You know? I don't know why things happen. I don't know.
Buildings are not built to burn, they're built to stand. But I got to tell you, the reason the Twin Towers fell down is because two 767s crashed into them, carrying several thousand pounds of JP-8 jet fuel.
In the 136-year history of the New York City Fire Department, we had lost a little more than 750 men in the line of duty, killed in the line of duty. On September 11th, we lost 343 men in 28 minutes. The NYPD lost 23 police officers. The Port Authority lost 37 police officers. Every once in a while, I'll be in the firehouse and I'll look at the pictures of the guys that perished that day. And you look and you say, oh yeah, I forgot that he died too. You know, there's just so many that you almost forget who died. It'll never be the same.
Those firefighters, my son, my friends, responding down to those buildings, looked out of the windows of their rigs like we always did. And we looked at those buildings. And how horrific did they look? That cliche that we've used for so many years, when people are running out of burning buildings, firemen are running in. I want you to look at those buildings and I want you to say, firemen looked at that and they ran into that? You better believe it.
You know, the fire department lost 343 people. That's an incredible number. But it lost over 4,000 years of experience. We lost the best and the brightest that service had across 3 generations of firefighters. And Tim was one of them.
I think people think that because we talk a lot about fire department or police department or Port Authority who were lost down there, that we think that the other people down there mean any less. They're the whole reason he went in. And I'm sure, without a doubt, he was thinking, this could be my mother, my daughter, my son, my brother. I'm sure so many of them were thinking that.
There's sin in this world. I don't pretend to understand what the reasons are. I try to, but I don't. I like to focus on the good in the world. And I think ultimately the good is going to overshadow the evil.
A lot of things that I thought were important, that the car wasn't working correctly and that I was bent out of shape, that a certain team wasn't winning, truly has no bearing on life, as long as, the person I'm standing here is okay and my family, my children are doing, best we can. Remember those who need right now and do what you can to help them.
All we need is a pat on our back from the guy that's working next to us. That's all we need. Yes, the story should be told, but most guys would rather tell it and walk away and just go back to being firemen again.
You go to the firehouse, it's like people are always in, out, all the time. And sometimes, the attention's nice. Sometimes you like it. There was one particular night, this very attractive young woman came in and she started talking to me, and she left. She gave me a card and said, if I need comfort, I should give her a call. I never called her.
We stopped by this tattoo parlor in our area, Rising Dragon Tattoos. He said, listen, we wondering if we get the whole house to come in. You could, give us a deal or something. And he's like, oh, sure. What'd you want? I was like, oh, something small, blah, blah, blah. Of course, everybody backs out last minute. So maybe a change from not everyone getting it or just me, I don't know. But I ended up getting the biggest memorial tattoo on the job. Some people see it, they say maybe it's a bit too graphic. But that's what I saw that day. That's what's burned into my head.
I say it every day I'm at work. I love this job. And I know he's with me at every fire I go to. And I carry his tradition on to just go to fires and enjoy every minute I possibly can.
Look at your brother in his eyes and tell him you love him.
Gives me great personal pride to present to you the first firefighting class of 2002. Are prepared to go forth in service. Protecting the persons, people,